Jonah, thanks so much for coming back. I'm glad to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Um, the last week has been kind of stressful just with everything in school and stuff, but I'm doing all right.
Okay, good. Yeah. I did want to talk a little bit about school because last session I think we talked about how you're graduating soon and how that's kind of stressing you out.
Mhm.
So do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, I think about graduating and kind of leaving, you know, the busy life also of being a student, and so it seems like it might be hard to transition just to be working full time. And then I also have like just this nagging anxiety about not doing a good job at whatever I'm doing after graduation and
Mm.
failing. I think I'm thinking a lot about like maybe I have imposter syndrome or something and I just am not good enough to be a professional social worker. And so it's kind of scary to see the end coming because that means I actually have to do it.
Right.
uh,
Yeah, that sounds really stressful definitely that transition from student to professional is a big jump.
yeah.
Um, and so I want to talk a little bit about this fear that you have of not being good enough. It sounds like you talk about imposter syndrome. So can you tell me like exactly what that looks like for you?
Yeah, I feel like it might sound silly, but I feel like I'm going to be exposed as somebody who doesn't know anything, like in a room full of professionals who know everything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's yeah. That sounds really scary. Almost sounds like that could prevent you from doing things that you might have done without that thought. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so where do you think this thought comes from? Has it kind of always been there, or when did you start having that feeling?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think I started, and maybe I just have low self esteem, I don't know. When I was in my undergrad, I wasn't doing well in school.
Hmm.
And so I ended up having to take a break from school because I just couldn't figure it out. And I think since then I've been really hard on myself about not feeling like I'm smart enough or not feeling like I'm good enough at stuff. And so now that I'm in my master's program, I'm like, it's a shock I even got in, honestly. And
Hmm.
so then I just feel like I don't know anything, and because I didn't necessarily retain a lot during my undergrad, I just really struggled through. So I think maybe when I was in my early 20s, um, a while ago, but yeah, it's been something, especially in spaces with people who are like professional or licensed social workers. I just feel like they can easily talk about all these different things that theories and all these like different modalities, and I still don't know what I'm doing.
Hmm.
So it's kind of it makes me feel pretty bad.
Okay. So you're about to graduate, right? So you've been in your program for a couple of years at least?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to just, it sounds like that fear is really, really strong and kind of all encompassing and also kind of like I'm either really bad at this or I have to be really good at this, like all the other professionals in social
Mm-hmm.
work. And that's kind of that's a really high bar to set for yourself to be as good as people who maybe have been in the profession for decades. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
so,
true.
and
Yeah.
it sounds like a lot of comparison between yourself and other people. So I kind of wanted to like break it down a little bit and look at the facts. So it's been a couple of years that you've been in your program.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how have your grades been? What do they look like?
Well, I have a 4.0.
Okay.
So that's been really exciting for me.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I end up doing, which is so unfair to not only me but everybody in our program, is I'll just say, well, it's different because I'm not in the classroom.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just good at this because it's on the computer. I still am like minimizing my success.
Yeah, it sounds like you're kind of discounting the fact that you have a 4.0.
Yeah.
That's an amazing grade point average, and
Yeah.
not a lot of people can maintain that, especially up until the end of your program. Like that's a huge success.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so so what are some ways that maybe you can focus on the positive aspects of that rather than almost negative aspects that aren't even really there, kind of comparing yourself to people in the classroom and stuff like that.
I've had this feeling for like a long time in a lot of different professions that I've done or, jobs. And what I've done in the past that might work now is just kind of taking time to be mindful of like things I have achieved on my own, maybe like moments of reflection instead of only looking forward and being like, I'm not going to be able to do this, and maybe I could look back and say, oh, I've done it before, and so maybe I can just continue doing a good job. But I just am so anxious about it. But yeah, that could help for sure.
I know, I like that idea of being able to like reflect on the things that you have done before. So, I mean, you talked about your undergraduate and you had to take a little bit of a break, but obviously you had to, you went back and you were able to complete it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and now you're at the end of your master's program, graduate level degree, and your 4.0 grade point average. Like that's amazing.
Well, thank you.
So maybe reflecting on those things, like I got through my undergrad and I've gotten through my whole master's program with this 4.0 average, that you can do this.
Yeah, I'm hoping I can start taking steps to making sure reflection helps, but that's a good idea. I also struggle with like just dismissing or discounting everything, or like if I achieve something good, I always have excuses as to how it happened for me,
right.
And so maybe thinking more rationally around that instead of just chattering of you're not good.
Yeah, and I mean, you could even almost put yourself on trial, so to speak. So your inner voice is saying like, oh, this only happened because of this thing, and I'm not really that good. It just looks like I am. Really putting that thought on trial. Like, okay, like I'm saying that I'm not as good as I think I am.
Yeah.
What are the facts? What is the evidence for that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And I mean, let's do it right now, maybe. So, what is the evidence that you're not as good as what your grades say?
I don't think there's like stone cold evidence. I think it's just my inner monologue, which is such a hindrance. But you're right. Like, I mean, I work hard and then I have a 4.0, and should be that.
Yeah, I mean, what's the evidence that that's not true, that you are as good as the grades that you have?
I've just had success, like, not only in school, but professionally. Like I can build rapport with people, which is like important, and there's all these tells that will say, that tell me like, yeah, you'll probably be fine. So yeah, I think maybe I just get into the cycle, and I do need to put myself on trial a little bit more, because when I think about it that way, it seems silly for me to just be like, oh, I'm never gonna be good at this, because there's no reason why I should really. There's no proof as to why I should like feel that way. That's a good way of thinking at it. I need to do it a lot more, I think.
Yeah, so that's just especially with this coming up, those thoughts are gonna possibly start happening more often. So maybe just kind of like taking a second and being like, okay, like a thought is coming up again. Maybe I need to like sit down and write down like what is really true and what is, maybe my inner monologue kind of going into that negative thinking pattern again.
Yeah. No, that's great. I'm definitely going to start doing that. Especially as, with each passing class and stuff, I get a little more nervous. So maybe preparing in advance for graduation too by having that toolkit would be good.
I think this is something, I'd like you to take home with you today and really, maybe over the next week until we see each other again, really do that, start writing those things down and see what you come up with as far as like evidence to the contrary of those negative beliefs that you have. And then we'll meet again next week and kind of process that and figure out how we can move on with that situation, maybe in a more positive way.
Okay, I mean, that sounds good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.